Hi, everybody. Sarah from Sup Junkie here, and I have the absolute pleasure and honor of chatting to Lindsey Tilton today, fresh off the back of smashing it up at Last Paddler Standing this year, having competed for 3 years in a row. Welcome, Lindsey.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
Absolute pleasure. Let me just give a brief sort of synopsis of who you are, what you do, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong, and you can also tell me a little bit more about yourself. So
Sounds
you
good.
you com competed in the last paddle standing in 2023, and you held the record at 48 laps for a woman. You've done this last weekend, which we'll talk about at length. You are inspirational, motivational, such a positive force. You are a founder of, or co-founder, I think, of Aloha Athletics. You've also done the crossing for cystic fibrosis, which I know is quite dear to your heart, twice. And you also were the first woman to compete and finish the Great Alabama 650, which is, if people don't know about that, they need to look it up, and maybe we can talk about that as well. So, can you tell me, in your words, a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into the whole stand-up paddleboarding thing?
Yeah, so you pretty much nailed it on my race performances and such. I got started paddling during the pandemic, but I had a background in endurance. I've always been really interested in going really far for a long time. And then some people are interested in shorter distance. But when I was running, I was like always interested in going for as long as possible. Like I haven't done it yet. I have a little bit of an injury that I've been rehabbing for the past few years, but the idea of like running a 100-mile race has always been so interesting to me to see these people, they just run for hours and overnight. So that's translating to getting into the paddling, coming into the ultra space is kind of a natural fit. But just like general background, I live in South Florida. I'm in my, I was about to say mid 30s, but what do you call it? Low 30s? I don't know. And I work in finance full time, but I also have a passion project called Aloha Athletics, which you're right. I co-founded with Casey McCullough, but I now currently own Aloha Athletics by myself. And it started actually out as a paddleboarding community. And it was actually born from the first last paddler. Unfortunately, I had a little bit of harassment during that race by a man that accused me of cheating. And, I grew up with brothers. I have really thick skin, and honestly, words don't bother me. But what bothers me the most is someone could say that to me, to one of my, someone said that to me, can be said to one of my friends, or even someone else who might not have, the same tough skin. And I just don't think that there's any place for bullying and harassment in this sport, or really any sport, but especially this sport, because this is a sport I compete in and I don't want to stand for that. I'm very not down with people mistreating each other, especially in a bullying or harassing way. So that's what sparked the Aloha Athletics community. Is I just wanted to start a community for paddlers that felt so supported, cheerleader for anything that they were doing in their life, and generally cared about the folks that came into that. So what that started out as was stand-up paddleboarding coaching, and I wanted to provide as much free information and information that I have discovered throughout my time in ultra and in sports. I'm a little bit of like a nerd, so I've done a lot of research um, on this, and I think that's how I attribute to a lot of my performances, just to so much research, trial and error, and I consider myself like a science project. Like I'm always testing something different when I'm racing, seeing to get feedback. Um, so I started that and was providing podcast, blog, one-on-one coaching, group coaching, whatnot. And then I started a challenge last year, Endless Aloha Challenge, which really became like a community and a family. And that was really the spirit of what Aloha Athletics was, is just supporting people on and off the water and just having this community. Like if you showed up to a race, maybe you didn't know someone in real life, but you knew someone through the challenge. You just had that community connection to make everyone feel supported and not alone. I know when I first started getting into paddleboarding, I was very intimidating moving down to Florida. I'm very fortunate to live near the Jupiter Tuesday Night Race League. And it was really intimidating for me to go out into this community of like really fast racers. Like we have some of the best paddlers in the world in Jupiter, ironically. So I wanted to help bridge that gap and just make people feel comfortable that they always had someone, no matter if they were first in a race or last. We celebrate everyone the same. It's really about the effort and getting out there. So that's how it started. But over the time, it actually transitioned more into a mental performance coaching business. So I still have the challenge, but actually this year we opened it up to all disciplines. So whether you're running, logging miles, biking, whatever. And then I launched a training journal as well. So it's kind of like the history of Aloha Athletics and my background. If there's anything that I missed there that you want to know, just let me know.
No, we can stop the interview right now. You've covered it all. I love it that that whole thing was born out of that bullying, which absolutely we don't want to see anywhere in our world today, let alone in stand-up paddleboarding, because stand-up paddleboarding has got this lovely everybody who talks about it says it's a great community feel, which it absolutely is. So to not put up with that, I applaud you very much for that. And I know that's something that is very dear to your heart. So, and the other thing is, I love when I finished racing, I got into helping with the event side of it. And that was really to be a meet and greet, friendly face at the races. I knew what it was about. Other people don't. And they can be really intimidated by people. And we are all the same. At the end of the day, we're pretty much all the same. We might be slightly better at one thing than another, but the sub community is really helpful. And, I know you know this, but really helpful and supportive in any way. So I think what you've done is with Aloha is really admirable. And is it predominantly for women?
Yes and no. I mean, when I first started it, I thought that I was going to be speaking mostly to women, but I actually have a lot of men as well, because I'm, the face behind it and I can relate and provide experiences for women. I would say it's predominantly women, but we also have men in our community as well.
Good. That's good to hear.
It's actually one of my goals for 2026 is with like the launch of the journal, because statistically most men don't journal. So my goal is like to get men journaling. And even though I am this like loud female voice, like I don't want to dull my femininity in racing at all, especially in races like last paddler standing when you're competing against the boys. It's very easy to do that. So I lean into the opposite of being like completely girl, like I'm going to be wearing pink and glitter, and that's just my vibe. And that's not a show, that's just who I am. Pink's my favorite color, it always has been, probably always will be. But yeah, I would love to get more guys into the space as well, because it also helps females having men in the community to support them at races, familiar faces. I think it's a positive for both men and women. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if we can get those men wearing pink and glitter too, then all the better. We know some are really up for that. So let's just head back a little bit. We are, as I say, going to talk predominantly about last paddler standing, but let's head back a little bit. Were you a sporty kid as a little one?
Honestly, not really. Like I used to make fake notes to skip gym class when I was younger. Like I
Me
would make
too.
excuses. I would say like my period, this or that, like crazy stuff. Like I sprained my liver, like stuff that's like not possible, right? Like I just thought it was silly as a kid. I would do whatever it takes to get out of to get out of gym class. I did do cheerleading through most of my life, from like kindergarten through I cheered my freshman year of college, and then I retired from that. And cheerleading is athletic, don't get me wrong, but
Yep.
it's very different. I wasn't on like a team sport type of sport when I was younger.
Yeah. I was going to say, when you're talking about cheerleading, I thought I've seen cheerleading. It is intense and very athletic. So when you got into stand-up paddleboarding, and you can tell me how and why, I think I understand it correctly that one of your first races, or perhaps your first race, was the crossing for cystic fibrosis. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because if it was, people don't know that's an 80-mile open ocean crossing from the Bahamas to South Florida. So can you talk a little bit about that and if that is a correct fact?
Yes, that is correct. So I started stand-up paddleboarding during the pandemic in 2020, and I was living in Northern Virginia outside of DC. And I just had like a rec board. I got started with that. I randomly took a paddle yoga class and I fell in love with it. I was like, I love being on the water. I love doing yoga on the water. This is so cool. This is so different. And it doesn't hurt that like my husband willingly came along to that class and now he was doing it. So I was like, maybe this is something we can do together. But then I shortly moved from Virginia to to South Florida the following year after I got that paddleboard. So I moved down here with my 10.6 boat, probably 40-pound rec board. And then I saw somewhere, I feel like maybe it was on social media, the crossing for cystic fibrosis being tagged. And I was like, this sounds so cool. Like I looked into it. I had no idea that, the Bahamas is so close to Florida. 80 miles away is Bimini, or 83. People were paddling from there to Florida. And that just sounded so cool to me, having that like endurance mindset of always being interested in these long challenges and long races. It's like, I want to do that. Of course, I had the 10.6 race board, and I actually trained that whole year on the race board. So I signed up for that race in February, and the race was in June, and I didn't have a race board until May. I believe I got my first race board from Keith Bogart, 14-foot board. So I trained on that 10.6 race board. This is where I was talking about showing up intimidated to race league, because everyone's on these paddle boards. I don't know what they are. They look totally different than what I have. I have this slow, I'm going to be last every single race league on this board. I actually even competed in a race on that board in the beginning too. But that's how I did. So I signed up for it. I watched a documentary that they had online called Epic Love, and it kind of talks about the story of what cystic fibrosis is, what this community is about, what the because it's a fundraiser, it's a race, but it's also more so a fundraiser. So what the fundraising is about, and it followed the journey of someone with CF in that video, and I just remember being so emotional watching it, and I was like, I have to do this. And it sounds crazy that, the longest I've probably ever paddled is maybe 2 miles, like going out and back on the Potomac. And I'm going to do 80 miles. My husband thought I was absolutely crazy. But, I just really felt this like push to do it. And that for me was so life-changing, because it's how I met the majority of my friends. I had just moved to Florida that ended November. So I was only here for a few months before I started getting into that community and that race training. They have a nice little training community where I live. They were hosting weekly training paddles. So it was really great. It was really life-changing. And then once I did that and I actually completed it, I went iron my first year, which was a shocking shock to most people, myself included, because I got injured on a surf trip. A few months prior to that, I sprained my ankle. So my longest paddle going into the crossing was 12 miles. And then I went and did 80. I will note that it was a very calm ocean year, which helps. But it's still 80 miles, right? So yeah, I was just addicted after that. And then from there is when I signed up for my first Last Paddler. Someone in the Piper's Angels community did it the year prior, and it sounded very interesting to me. And then from there, it was like the 650. Like you learn more about these ultra races once you get into the community, which is what signing up for the crossing for cystic fibrosis did for me.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, I have once in my time told someone who'd paddled for 3 weeks he was going to paddle around Great Britain. And I just said, are you sure? Are you mad? I mean, I would never say that to anybody anymore, because people are able to do the most incredible things. And actually, I think the less you know, the more likely you are just to have a go. If you talk to multiple people about it and heard its history for years on end, you probably would have thought, oh, I'm not ready for that. But, it's great, isn't it, to be innocent about something and just know that you can do it. But you, Lindsey, you definitely have endurance in your blood, definitely. and clearly from, quite a young age, I guess. So let's talk about Last Paddler Standing. So I was very lucky to be invited over to be on the media team, which meant that I could watch people like you. I've been following you for years, watched your journey. People like Bruce from the UK. I know Bruce and Karen really, really well. I've known for about 8 years. They're very, very close friends. Meet people that I, have sort of almost obsessed over in watching this race for 3 years from my TV. I have watched almost for 48 hours straight, just dipping in and out, dipping in and out. And it's been so exciting. So for me to actually be on the ground and witness, especially what you did, has been an absolute joy. But let's backtrack. So for people who don't know, can you explain the format of Last Paddler Standing?
Yeah, so Last Paddler Standing is similar to the Last Man Standing, which maybe we should rebrand that. Last Man Standing running races, which means it's an every hour on the hour race. So for Last Paddler Standing, the distance is 3.3 miles, and every hour on the hour you go out and paddle 3.3 miles. So that could potentially take you 30 minutes and then you'd have a 30-minute rest, or that could take you 59 minutes and then you'd have a 1-minute rest. At the top of the hour, if you're going back out, you have to be ready to go when the whistle blows. And then after 48 hours of racing, the lap length increases to 4.9 miles, which is where it differs from the backyard ultra in the running scene. Generally, those stay the same course length. So that's a little bit different in the format for stand-up paddling. And Greg Wingo, the race director, did that with the intention of not allowing this race to go on for days on days and days on end, because this year, I think a new record was set for the last man standing backyard ultra of 5 days. And I don't know, Sarah, if you'd want to be commentating out there for 5 days, but
No
I know I
problem.
wouldn't want to be out there paddling for 5 days. So it's a
Yeah.
blessing and a curse, the super lap.
Yeah, no, I did talk to him about it, and I didn't realize the whole significance of that is that you cannot have this race going on, because for sure there'd be some paddlers who could paddle like that for days on end. And also he didn't really want the paddlers going into a third night, because obviously you've got to be aware of dangers. People, we'll talk about this later, but people falling asleep on their board, and you're pretty much, you could pretty much be alone. So I do get it. As evil as Mr. Greg Wingo is about, designing these fantastic races, he's not that crazy. So,
Yeah.
so in 2023, it was your first last paddler standing, and you completed 48 laps, which was utterly incredible. And that record has stood, till last weekend. But very soon afterwards, you did that. You stopped at 48. You decided that was it. That's what I said I was going to do. I've done it. I'm done. But very soon after that, you clearly, and this is, very well documented on your own social media channels, maybe regretted that decision, because you felt that you wanted to really, really sort of support women and say, you can do this, you can do anything you like, you can push yourself further. So can you talk about 2023 and how it felt, A, to do that 48 laps, but B, then to feel that slight sense of disappointment, and why you felt that afterwards?
Yeah, so I went into 2023 with the goal of hitting 48 hours, and I really didn't know if I could do it. I've never stayed awake that long in my life. I've never paddled anywhere near that. I mean, I had done the crossing, yes, 80 miles, which is about half of the 48, but at much faster time, like less than 24 hours. So I had no idea what was really possible for me, but um, I like to say, like, I was born with the gift of delusion, and I set really crazy goals all the time. And that's just my natural way of thinking, is to think really big, which it's funny. My husband and I kind of argue about, not argue, but like we disagree about this, because a lot of people have the mindset of like, why would you set something if that's not possible? Or like that is the statistic chances of doing it are slim. Where I'm like, well, you don't know if you don't try. And that's always how I've been. So when I saw that the race went 48 hours the year prior, Paolo Marconi won at 48 hours, I was like, what, why can't I try that? Like, what's different me than him? So, well, there's a lot different than me than Paolo Marconi, but in the moment I was like, why can't I do that? Right. So I went out with the goal of 48, and getting to 48 was just such a wild journey. I've never done anything like that in my life, and it was just so amazing. And I will always say that first last paddler standing was my favorite, because I had so many friends and family come out. It's like we had a party at our campsite for 48 hours. It was really like last party going, because we had a revolving door of friends. My co-founder of Aloha Athletics, Casey McCullough, was there, and she was just being so silly. She had a portable karaoke microphone. She was riding around the park singing karaoke, because one of the rules is that you can't have music. So it was just so fun, and also very challenging. Like, I had my first real experience of what it feels like for your hands to be completely torn up from blisters. I've never had that before. I don't know what changed between my first crossing and that, because I didn't have any issues in the crossing, but I had major issues. I had so many pairs of gloves I was going through. My husband was running to the bathroom, using the hand dryer to dry my gloves out. And that was the first time I ever hallucinated in my life either. Like, I don't drink or do drugs or anything like that. So I've never had any hallucinations. So that was a crazy experience. I think that was at like hour 40, and I just came off the water, like straight face. I walked right past Greg because I remember he said that he can choose to pull you off the water if he thinks it's unsafe or you're not, fit to go back out. So I didn't want him to know that I was hallucinating. So I just walked right past him, went straight to my husband. I was like, please Google how to stop hallucinations. Like, I don't want to be hallucinating on the water. It's very a weird experience. I don't like it for me. So I had all of those experiences, those like really extreme highs of like having friends there, singing, laughing, dancing to, oh my gosh, I'm standing asleep, falling up, I'm hallucinating. We had extreme fog that first year, which we had this year too. My first time paddling in the fog, all of these things, like all of these firsts for me. First time, getting downpoured on during paddling. I didn't even have a rain jacket or any rain gear. I learned a lot of lessons that year, but so yeah, I got to 48 hours, which was the goal I set for myself. And I was having conversations with my crew, the laps leading up to it, because I don't think they really thought I was going to make it to 48 hours. So we didn't have the conversation until it was maybe 46 hours. Like, what are you going to do? And I was like, what do you mean? I'm stopping. My goal is 48 hours. Like, I haven't even considered doing the 49. And I was so content and at peace with hitting 48 and just really stoked on the fact that I was able to paddle in a circle for 48 hours. Like, what the heck? That's so crazy. But my husband was really like, you should really try. Like, why wouldn't you try? And I think like the sleep deprivation and just feeling like I do not want to do one more lap. Like this year when I stopped at 49, my husband wanted me to go back out for 50. And I was like, why would I do that? Like, I'm so happy to be done. So it's kind of the same feeling. Like my last lap was my slowest lap that year. And I just really took it all in. I went super slow. That year, Blake Carmichael and I were paddling a lot of laps side by side together. And that was one of the few where I was by myself because I intentionally was going slow, really just like knowing it was my last lap. But looking back, I did have regret because I felt like I finished and I had so much energy, which a little bit of adrenaline, like coming off the highs and lows of racing. But I was running around the park because that year the race went on for 2 more laps, I think. And two of my good friends at the time were the last two. So I wanted to watch and cheer for them. So the Nathan Benderson Park layout's a little bit different in that it's like more of like a circle and you can go around the full circle. So I was sprinting across the park to find these different viewpoints to watch my friends and to cheer for them. And we were playing music and singing. So then like the next day, I was like, I had all this energy to be running around the park cheering. I should have tried on that super lap. And the reason why I regret it the most is I think the message that it sent to people is that, women aren't cut out to do the 49th lap because it is a longer lap and you are racing against men at that point. I would say you're pretty much sprinting. I know 4.9 miles per hour it's below my race pace, but after not sleeping for 2 days, and I mean, like your form changes. Like I'm looking at videos from this year and I was like, what the heck? Like,
What am
because
I
your
doing?
body your body gets so tense and so locked up. And I don't think you can really prevent it because it's just miles and miles of paddling. So to me, like that last lap, I felt like I was sprinting because I'm trying, even though it's 4.9, you're going faster because if you are going to choose to go back out, you need downtime on land, you got to turn around your board, all that stuff. So I felt like it sent the message that women can't do it and that women can only get to 48. And whether that's in my head or people actually thought that, it really stayed with me. Like I don't have any children yet, but I am an aunt to a few little girls and I just think about them all the time, like the message that I'm sending to them. Like I always want to be a really positive role model. And I felt like that was not doing my duty as a role model because if I was to give an advice to a friend, they like I had this opportunity, but I might not be able to finish it. Should I try it or should I just blow past it and not give it any effort? And I felt like it sent the message to not give it the effort. When if I was giving advice to a friend, I'd be like, you should try any opportunity that you have. Like, why would you not, right? Like, it's so corny, but I kept saying this weekend to people to like try to convince them to keep going when they wanted to stop. It's like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I know that's like a cheesy sports quote, but it is so true. And like, what's worse for me is to have been timed out in 2023 in the super lap or to not try at all. And I think at the time, maybe my ego was a little bit in the way. And I was really worried about being timed out. And I thought that I would have been timed out. And to this day, I have no idea if I would have or would not have been timed out or not, but I didn't even give myself the chance to try. So that's why I went in after that. I was like, I really want to try this super lap and see if I can do it. And, hopefully next year we'll have more women trying the super lap, like now knowing that it's possible to get to that. And, I say this all the time, Sarah, like I'm not anything special. Like I'm not overly athletic. I'm really not. I have like an average shape body, average abilities in most things, but I'm just very determined, which is something that anyone can have. So if I can do it as a female, so can other girls, so can the guys that chose not to do it. I think anyone can do it if they really want to. What that looks like for them in their training, but I just wanted this year to have like the message that like it is possible for women to do this.
Absolutely, and you are certainly not a disappointment to anybody. You may have felt that in yourself, but not anybody else. And actually, we did learn from you because we had when you Super 7 were going out on the super lap, there was one guy who said, "No, I'm done. I'm happy." And we were just like, "No, don't do a Lindsey. Please don't regret anything." And he went out, and I was so pleased that I was, I wouldn't have thought. I'd have just gone, "Okay, that's fine." But we're like, no, you can't. You please do it. Don't leave anything out there. So, and I think he was really pleased that he did. So, it testament to you to have those feelings and be able to talk about that and to do it for, your nieces. I mean, that's just admirable. It's lovely. And also to not see yourself as this, high-end athlete, and you feel that you're very normal, and you clearly do have something up here, Lindsey, that gets you going further than maybe others. Now, I'm going to make a decision right here that we are going to come back for part 2 because we've not got time to talk about this year. So if that's all right with you, we might immediately dip in and do another recording.
Yes, of course.
So we can, there's just too much to talk about. So, but can we talk about 2024? So off the back of that, you then went to do we've got 10 minutes, so okay. let's talk 10 minutes about 2024. Sure. So you did the Great Alabama 650, which is another one of Greg's races. Now it is massively hardcore. He thinks it's one of the hardest races in the world, sup races in the world. But you did it, you managed it. It's completely different, isn't it? Can you just give us a little synopsis of what it is?
Yeah, so the Alabama 650 is a 651-mile race across the entire state of Alabama, and you have 10 days to do it. You travel through, I believe it's 9 different portages, but other than that, there's no specific set downtime in the race, except for those portages. You either have a 30-minute or a 45-minute stop while you portage around. And that essentially is so that you're not driving through. Some of them are driving portages. So it's a little bit different than, the Yukon 1000, where you have, I think it's 6 hours a day or 8 hours a day you have to be on land. So with the Alabama 650, you really set your own schedule, which is different than Last Paddler, where you have Greg blowing a whistle at you every hour. There are 3 checkpoints and cutoffs you have to make, but as long as you make those cutoffs, you can choose to paddle straight for 2 days and take a day off, whatever it is. I didn't have that luxury because I was too slow on a stand-up, but it's just different format where you have basically 10 days, as long as you hit the checkpoints and stop at the portages, which you have to because the rivers are dammed, then anything else is pretty much fair game in terms of the race.
And it's not a usual race for a stand-up paddleboarder, is it? It's canoes and kayaks, I think, predominantly, isn't it? So
it's predominantly sit down. I was the 3rd person to do it on a stand-up and the first female to do it. So out of, there hasn't been that many finishers. It's capped every year at 20, and I believe it's in the 6th year, potentially 7th year. Don't quote me on it. For sure, under 100 finishers, I would say, because a lot of them are repeat finishers, but the majority of them have been on sit downs in that race. In that race, you can choose your craft, but you can also switch crafts throughout. So someone might choose to start on an OC1 and then finish on a surf ski, or go back and forth depending on the conditions.
Yeah, because it is all bodies of water, isn't it, as well?
Hmm.
Um, so I mean that I'm breathing over this like it was nothing, but it was absolutely massive. And to see you get that trophy and just to be the first female, I don't think there are any, there are just not that many stand-up paddleboarders who take on that challenge. So you may very well hold that record for a really long time, Lindsey. So super well done on that.
I
So
hope not, though. I hope some more girls will go and do it.
yeah, well, you are so inspirational that I'm sure they will. But yeah, let's see. Let's watch this space. So let's jump quickly forward to 2024, last paddle standing. You came, I've read and seen little interviews with you about your disappointment at only doing 25 laps, but this was coming off the back of the Alabama, where your body surely must have been physically exhausted because they're quite close, the events, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. The Alabama finished, I think, on October 1st. And then I went on to race Chattajack later that month with a goal of top 10 finish, which I did. So I was like, not a lot of downtime because I went from Alabama to training for Chattajack. And then last year was different for Last Paddler Standing, where it was actually in November instead of December because it
Yeah,
was coming off of ICF, which was held at the same location as
yeah,
Last Paddler Standing last year.
yeah. So your disappointment, please, let's just chuck that out of the window because you actually went and you actually paddled 25 laps, which again is just admirable. Your body must have been exhausted, but do you see that now? Sort of looking back at retrospectively, do you just think actually that was pretty cool that I did that, and or do you still feel that sort of why didn't I do more? I think in part two we're going to talk more about the mental game, which I know is a really big thing about your paddling and everything. But are you pleased with that? Really, your 25 laps and actually doing that on the back of
Um,
what you did?
so I think I made the right choice at the time. I know that I could have pushed through that. I have the ability to push through pain and suffering. It's kind of one of my skills, but I think it was the right choice because the conditions that year, my goal was to do 49 and to finish 49. And I had known with how much the wind was blowing and that the forecast wasn't showing it getting any better, like the chances of me finishing 49 in those conditions, because the wind was like over 20 miles an hour, I believe. I was like, I don't think that that's going to happen. And is it worth pushing through the wind for another, 24 hours to get to that point? Looking at my husband who was outside, it was freezing last year. Like we live in Florida. We're, below 75, I would say is cold, but it was actually cold to everyone, not just to the Floridians. And we had space heaters delivered and heater blankets because he was so cold in the campsite. I was so cold. And we had just finished 10 days together in the 650, which is really longer because we had to drive to Alabama and drive home. So it was maybe like 13 days of my husband making this sacrifice for me, taking pretty much all of his PTO for the year, following me down a river, not even seeing me, but for like a few minutes here and there. And then I'm just looking at him in the camp, like, miserable. And I just felt like, if I'm not going to finish the 49th lap this year, which is the goal, or I feel like I'm not going to finish it, do I really want to see my husband suffer out here for like 24 hours? And he'll say all the time, like, you shouldn't have done that for me. Like, I was fine. But I just felt like as a wife, he had sacrificed so much for me doing crewing for me. I mean, crewing for any ultra is a sacrifice, but especially the 650. Like, there's no sacrifice in crewing greater than the 650, in my opinion. And he had just, I'll say suffered through that. He had fun, but he had just
Yeah.
suffered through that. And I was like, I think I need to put my goals aside and, just go home. And at the end of that lap, when I decided, I was really happy to go home and get out of the cold. Like I normally would have stick around. I usually try to stick around for races to see like the last person finish, but I was just we were so cold that I was like, we just need to go drive home. Um, so
Oh,
25 hours is, a long time. And that's what I told everyone this year is like in Last Paddler Standing, the word only gets thrown out a lot because we think of the race as, getting to the super lap or becoming the last paddler standing, which we saw, was it 52 laps for John Batson this year, I think, 52.
uh,
So
yeah.
people, when is it?
Well,
Yeah,
it was a bit
48,
confusing, wasn't it? Because
50.
yeah,
Yeah, I
50.
know
It was actually
yes,
50. Yeah.
50.
Yeah.
50 actual paddle.
Yeah.
So when you think 25 is half of that, right? And you hear people this year talk about like, oh, I only did that, or I only did 12. And I was telling everyone during the race is like, when else would you have paddled 12 hours? Have you
Yeah.
ever paddled 12 hours in your life before this? Probably not. When else would you paddle through the night? So we focus on, the last paddler standing, the people who make it to the super lap, but there's so many victories and milestones along the way. And this is actually feedback I gave to Greg. I was like, we need to do something to celebrate those milestones. Like, can we have a 12, 24, 36 recognition of some sort? And maybe I told him like, maybe it's a different poker chip or something, just to
Yeah.
recognize
Good idea.
that achievement is so massive, but it gets kind of downplayed. Oh, I only went 12. I only went 20. What do you mean you only went 24 hours? That is 24 hours of paddling. Like,
Yeah.
that's insane, right? But in this community where everyone is doing these long distance races, it's really easy to think of the winner or the super lap and not realize your own achievement. So even though I was disappointed at 25 hours, I still recognize like that is a long time. Like, when have you
Good.
ever done anything for a day? I have never done anything for a day besides paddling. Like, I've never, I'm just going to sit here and read a book for a day. I've never done that, right?
Yeah.
So I think anyone who's had those personal achievements, 6 hours, 12 hours, whatever it is, it's really impressive. So I was happy with the 25, and I was glad that I made the decision, especially seeing, looking back, I hate to say it, but like I was right. Like, the wind was too much to finish in those conditions. At least for my level of training, I would not have, or my athletic abilities, I would not have finished it. So
Yeah.
it was the right call, but I was disappointed in the time because I really wanted to come back. I had that fire from only going to 48. So here I am saying only for going to 48 hours the year prior and not trying the super lap.
Yeah.
I really wanted to do it.
We say this all the time. We were very aware when we were talking on the live feed about saying only, only, only. And it's like, we must stop saying it. Lindsey, we're going to time out in a minute, less than a minute. So I'm going to say thank you so much. You're utterly amazing. And we're going to go probably straight into part two if you have time.